V1. Rotate.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our three-part mini-series on the iFly 747-400 for P3D. Now before we get into the conclusion and my final thoughts on the product, or at least my final thoughts on the initial impressions, I wanted to address a couple of things that we missed in the other two videos that I didn't have time to cover. The first thing would be the audio quality. Now you may notice that the audio quality is slightly better in this. I realized that my original headset recordings just wasn't cutting it in terms of the quality of audio, in terms of the quality of my voice. There was a lot of popping sounds, etc., etc. Anyways, so I've upgraded the kit a little bit, and hopefully this solves all of those issues. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the paint. Now, the keen-eyed observers of you will notice that this isn't the same paint scheme that we used in the first two videos of this series. And that's because I've gone to the iFly website and I've downloaded the first add-on livery for this aircraft that I could find. And one of the things that comes with the add-on liveries is a file selector, or two sets of files, one to keep that glossy exterior that I was talking about in the first video, one of my original, I would say, complaints, that it was a little bit too shiny, and another file that essentially converts it to a much more matte finish that I was actually hoping for when I first got the product. I talked about wing views, I talked about certain areas being a little bit too glossy, I talked about the reflectiveness, and that's pretty much all addressed in this. You can see the engines and some of the surfaces still, if we go back and forth to the right and to the left, you can see that they still retain some sort of reflection, but it's much more subdued, in my mind, a little bit more realistic. I'm very happy with this. I'm glad they included the file. It's a personal preference thing, so some of you out there might look at this and say, no, you know what, it could be a little bit glossier. I like the glossy finish of the aircraft. I like seeing the reflections. I'm more leaning on the side of I much prefer this. You can see that even on the fuselage there is a little bit of reflection, but it's not as overwhelming in my mind. You can see the windows still have that really nice light reflection on them. Everything else remains the same, but essentially nullifies all of those arguments I was making in the first video about the shininess of this aircraft. So very, very happy that I took the plunge to download took the time to download one of the add-on liveries, install it, and read through the quick readme. It's a very simple process. It's as simple as making a backup of the original and copy and pasting the new file, the reflectivity file for this level of reflection into the appropriate folder, and away you go. I'm not sure if it affects all of the aircrafts, including the default, but it certainly affected this one. Couldn't be happier. Looks much, much better in my opinion. The next thing I wanted to address real quick, popping over here onto the Flight 1 file library system, these are the repaints available for this aircraft at this time of recording being the 30th-ish of November 2015. So from my understanding, they've upgraded the paint kit from pre-Service Pack 1 to Service Pack 1. It's a slightly different paint kit, and as far as I'm aware, the older repaints out there are not compatible anymore with the post-Service Pack 1 paint kits, or liveries. So taking a quick look, we've got Continental, we've got Transaero, we've got Qantas new livery, we've got KLM new colors with that controversial new cheat line there. I kind of like it, personal preference. We've got Lufthansa, we've got EVA Air, Delta Airlines, Corsair, Air China, British Airways, next page, Air New Zealand, and Air France new colors. Those are the only ones tagged with Service Pack 1, so those are the only liveries that I can tell, official liveries from Flight 1 for this aircraft at the time of recording. As far as I can tell, they are working on it, so they are moving more and more of their original liveries over into the post-Service Pack 1 compatibility. Another thing I checked quickly on Avsim, there's about 50 or so entries for this aircraft. None of them really specify whether they're Service Pack 1 or not, so that is something to keep in mind when you are downloading this aircraft or when you're thinking about purchasing this aircraft. Your favorite livery may or may not already be available. Another thing that some people said they wanted to see was the cabin view. Now, in the flight deck, there is no cabin modeled behind the flight deck door, and that's totally acceptable and totally fine, understandable. PMDG got away with it in their original 747-400 just because the model was a little bit simpler, used a little bit less resources. This one being a little bit more complex, actually quite a bit more complex in terms of the VC layout and all of those polygons. So the cabin is not modeled, or at least the upper deck is not modeled from the flight deck. That being said, from the exterior view, if we pop on over here, we can actually go through the door, and we can see from the exterior view that the cabin is modeled from that view. So we can walk through this, and quite a nice job here, especially from basically this is all we're going to see. Normally we would see this from the outside. All the seats are present, the doors actually open, the cargo bins or the luggage bins are modeled. You can see there's even a little bit of a map on the screens for the passengers, which is nice. They even have the staircase if we get up to the front. I'm not sure if this actually changes based on the configuration tool, which we'll have a look at over in a second, if it changes the seating class or not. But here we can see the first class rather. There's the stairs over here up to the upper deck. You can see the upper deck is actually modeled as well from the exterior view, obviously, as well as the flight deck, not so much in terms of the door, but it's basically just to provide some sort of, oh hey, we can see the ridiculously scary looking first officer, captain, a couple of people in the jump seat. Anyways, yeah, so this is all from the exterior view only, but quite a bit of detail, especially considering most of what you're ever going to see from it is from about this vantage point. So yeah, good amount of detail from the on the cabin. We can have a close look here at the configuration tool that comes with the aircraft. So from this, you're able to set your payload, your fuel, and we'll talk about my fleet in a little bit. From here, we have a graphic displaying most of the aircraft. We can actually all of the aircraft. We can slide back and forth. We can individually select which passengers we'd like to be seated. If you're that kind of a detail person. We have the layout here. We can choose 3 class, 2 class, or even 4 class, depending on how many passengers you want as the maximum capacity for your variant. We have a little tab here that lets you select only the 747-400 at this time. That is the only model that is included with this aircraft. We'll get into that in my final thoughts. Or we can use the empty, full, and random buttons and generate a random payload. We can set the forward and aft cargo holds to whatever we'd like using both a percentage, mouse clicking the scale, the physical graphic, or setting the value in terms of kilograms or pounds in both of these. So very comprehensive in terms of a load manager. We've got the fuel settings. So again, we can go into detail here, or we can kind of just use some default settings. We've got empty, 1/3, 2/3, and full. We can set a percentage. We can set the kilograms or pounds value of how much fuel we want to add, or we can individually select each tank and put in a value we want and distribute the fuel ourselves. Now, I'm not familiar with the fuel distribution aspects of the 747 yet, or at least not comprehensive enough to start meddling around with this kind of stuff, so I usually use a kilograms or pounds value, and that's good enough for me. Fantastic amount of detail, though, if you do, or if you are familiar with these kinds of details of the aircraft. So we do have the option to do all that. My fleet. Now this is basically where we manage the each individual livery or variant. The aircraft comes with 3 variants. We've got the GE model, we've got the Pratt & Whitney, and we've got the Rolls-Royce variants all coming with the aircraft. Again, in the controversial orange of the iFly livery, or we can add our own liveries. The aircraft comes with 2 actual variants, if you will, actual liveries. We've got the British Airways, the One World that we saw in the original 2 videos. We've got Virgin Atlantic, using the GE engines. Or at this point, I've added the British Airways livery into the aircraft. Adding a livery is very, very easy. All you have to do is extract the files into the correct folder, your iFly 747 folder. Click on New. Fill in some details. It'll automatically select which texture and variant, blah, blah, blah. We can configure it for, okay, well, it's not going to let me do it, but essentially set up the initial parameters, so whether you'd like the LCD or the old CRT monitors, and each one of these aircraft is completely individually configurable, so you can have, let's say, the British Airways, you don't really like the CRT monitors, you can set it up for the new style FMCs, the new style NDs and MC and main flight display, MFD. So you can totally configure each one of these aircrafts for your flying style, your preferences. Each livery from the iFly website at least comes with a suggested feature set, so a suggested level of which of these options to plug in. But again, totally up to the user's choice. The other thing that it allows you to do is deselect or disable the 2D panels, saving what iFly claims a little bit in terms of memory and a little bit in terms of resources. Now I've deselected the the 2D panels, and I've also gone ahead. When you originally get the aircraft, you get both widescreen and normal screen. As far as I can tell, that's just for the 2D panels. So I've gone ahead and deleted the normal screen variants. Each one of these comes with two versions, the widescreen and the normal screen. I've gone ahead and disabled and deleted the 2D variants for the normal screen, just saving myself a little bit of in terms of the selection in my aircraft menu. Disabling the 2D panels, I found maybe it saved a couple of megs of VAS, but really nothing significant. That being said, it's nice to have the option. When you do select 3D only, you still do get pop-ups for the FMCs. I'm not quite sure why selecting the right-hand one pops up on the left and why the left one pops up on the right. Really doesn't really matter to me. Yeah, the aircraft will retain all of your settings, no problem. You can also select the fuel and payload. As far as I know, okay, going into the sim menu, we can select our doors. We've already covered that. Intelligent cruise, all of this good stuff. So all of the aircraft selectable features, whether it's the LCD versus the old school CRT monitor screens, all of that stuff is selectable in the FMC. We don't need to do that in the configuration window or program. The refuel and payload, going into that menu, the payload says FSX only. Now, I haven't really tested this out because it's a little bit, again, too comprehensive for me. I much prefer the graphic style, so I'll just set my my payload in that and then just carry it over. Selecting update automatically transfers it into the simulation, but the refuel does work, and we can set each one of the tanks. We can set the total fuel. It's a live update, so if I select 30, you can see that the total fuel is now 30. If I select 35 and set, it automatically distributes that into the tanks. You can see that updated there. You can see it updated in the total fuel, and everything is good there. So we don't have to use the configuration tool, but it is a nice addition. I do like to work with it, and both ways are supported in P3D, whether it's in the FMC or if it's in the external program. Now let's talk about night lighting. Night lighting in the virtual flight deck, at least, is absolutely fantastic, 100% improved. We've got some nice overhead lighting here, which is absolutely dimmable, any setting you'd like. We've got the glare shield here, which can be completely configured. Now, P3D's HDR is a little bit too bright for me, so I usually like to keep that at a little bit less than half, but atmospheric lighting is 100% configurable. You can select both the background intensity and the foreground, not the floodlights, but the mood lighting, or whatever you want to call it, to exactly the way you'd like. They've gone through a lot of work to make sure that that's completely individually selectable. Each of these wedding cakes here does something different. So right now we have the pedestal lighting on medium with no flood lighting. we can go ahead and turn the flood lighting up, and you can see that the center pedestal is now illuminated. That's wonderful. Each of the CRT monitors, or the old school monitors, are completely individually selectable, so both parts, whether it's the weather and terrain or the actual navigational display information. We've got a background lighting for the main part of the panel here, which is selectable on both sides, completely adjustable to whatever your heart's content desires, whatever. Super bright. You can set whatever mood lighting you'd like. Individually selectable from the dome light, which basically does what it says on the tin, makes everything nice and bright. Storm lights, I believe that works. That turns everything on high intensity, so that lightning isn't too jarring for the pilots. What else? They've gone so far as to model a little map light, which is also selectable completely, and this is a really nice little touch as well. I'm not sure how to configure textures or to put anything in the map lighting or the little chart lighting section here. It'd be nice to, maybe I can put a little chart in there or something like that, but that's totally selectable. We've got a little map light, so you can see the map light actually. Let's turn the rest off here. Let's go with that and that. And you can see the it's not the floodlight that's illuminating this control column here. It's actually the map light. So you can see in the real world, a pilot would have a little light over the over his station. I think it's this one here that illuminates not the control column so much. Here we go, the map light. But if they were to be looking at a map here, that's individually selectable as well. So that was one of the bigger complaints when this aircraft first came out, was that the background lighting was tied to the intensity of the actual background lighting. Does that make sense? I'm not even sure anymore. The point is, everything is completely 100% configurable. You can set the mood lighting exactly the way you want. I'm very happy with that. That is a Service Pack 1 or Service Pack 1 Alpha feature that I'm glad they finally implemented, because at night I really don't want to have to stare at this all the time or completely dark. One of the features that, again, on the PMDG aircraft, something I'm a little bit spoiled with, that is nice, is if you double right click on any one of these knobs, it goes either to full on or full off. I kind of wish that feature was implemented here, but no big deal. On the outside, the exterior of the aircraft, once the textures load, again, the night lighting is quite good. I'm a little bit put off by the intensity of the cabin lighting. Now, so far as I can tell, and I've gone through the settings menu, I've gone through the controls menu, there's no way to alter the intensity of the cabin lights, which is a little bit off-putting. Because most airlines have in the SOPs to dim the cabin lights at night on departure and arrival. I wish that that feature was implemented. It'd be nice to control. It doesn't even matter if it's the intensity from a percentage or if it's just really on or off. These are a little bit bright in my opinion. Maybe it looks a little bit better for everyone else, but this is a little bit too bright and garish for me. It might be acceptable in the cruise, but a little bit too bright, at least in my opinion, for night operations. The tail is wonderfully illuminated. Let's see if those little textures actually light up. Yes, they do. So the little textures on the tail that represent the tail lights actually illuminate. It'd be really cool if FSFX did a package for this, for lighting and whatnot. I have no idea if they will or not. The wing lighting actually lights up the wings, so that's really cool. Let's go into a wing view here and see. There's actually reflections. You can see it's illuminated on the engine, so you can see the little Rolls-Royce decals. The interior remains dark. Nice little features. So far, I'm very happy with the night lighting. Again, a little niggle with the cabin lighting. That's a little bit too bright for my taste, if you will. I kind of wish it was dimmable or settable, or at least on-off option. Again, it may be included, and I'm not quite sure how to do it. If it is, please let me know in the comments, but I haven't found a way to do it. It's a little bit, you can see the blue seating and all that. It's kind of cool. A little bit on the bright side for me. Back in the flight deck, we can configure the landing lights. Again, another feature I would like to see in a future service pack is, it doesn't have to be 4 individually selectable landing lights, but maybe at least 2 groups, the outboards and the inboards. That'd be kind of a nice feature to see. We can't really see the turnoffs. Do they do anything? Oh yeah, you can kind of see that it's spotlighted on the pushback truck over there. So we can see those, and we can also see the taxi light illuminates. A little bit on the blue side. Maybe it's got those new fandangled xenon lights. It looks a little bit xenon-y to me. That is now an adjective, and I will take full credit for that. Let's go into the exterior view here. So you can see it lights up the side of the fuselage with the landing lights. That's a nice little feature. Not too reflective, not too bright. Looks very, very realistic. Very, very cool. Again, the landing lights a little bit on the blue side, but can't really complain on that. You know, overall, they've done a fantastic job at the night lighting. The atmosphere of what it's like to see a 747 fully lit up at night like a Christmas tree. The flight deck lights, that's actually a good test. Let's turn on the dome light and see if that actually works from the exterior view. So let's go here and we'll turn on the dome light. Actually, let's turn on the storm lights. That'll light this thing up like a Christmas tree. Go back into the exterior view, and lo and behold, yes, it actually does. So you can see on the exterior view, if you put on the dome light, it actually reflects the dome light on the physical exterior model. Again, with those really creepy models. At night, they're even spookier for some reason. That's hey-ho. But yeah, a lot of detail in terms of the night lighting. Only little niggle would be the cabin lights. So remember earlier when we were talking about the 3D lighting effect that the landing lights have? During the day, it looks really great. At night, I'm not so sure about what this is, or I don't know what effects. Maybe it's optimized for a different platform. But in P3D especially, looks a little bit odd at certain angles. Again, from straight on, looks absolutely fantastic. From the rear, looks great. But from the side, well, a little bit of that star weird effect thing that I'm not too fond of. But again, a small gripe. Not sure if it's a platform issue or maybe it's a shader issue with me. Your mileage may vary, but for me it looks a little bit on the odd side from certain angles on the exterior. Again, a small gripe, but just thought I'd mention it. Okay, so I'm starting to run out of things to talk about this aircraft. We've covered pretty much everything. My small little gripes, like stupid wire on the left, stupid wire on the right, but again, small little thing. The shape and texturing of some of the light switches, the fact that it'd be nice to have two groups of landing lights, or maybe even individually selectable. The fact that there's nothing here on the overhead of the main panel, the glare shield, I guess. Maybe a little document holder, some texturing would be nice. What else? Some of the click spots, still a little bit of refinement. One of the things I didn't get a chance to talk about, the scroll wheel support's superb on the whole heading front, but also a little bit too easy to accidentally trigger the bank angle selector. So maybe keep that as a right-left click option only, and just have this whole zone for the heading. Again, just a small niggle. The landing gear lever, maybe a little bit of refinement there. On the exterior model, some of the texturing is a little bit, I would call, subpar. If we look at the flaps extension in just a little bit here, maybe this area here, just a basic cleanup, just general things that I kind of hope that get improved as over time. And that's another thing is that iFly seemed to be continually updating this product and continually making these refinements, and they didn't just come out with a product and basically leave it there. They're continuing their active development of this product. They are listening to customer feedback, which is a great, almost not expected, but a great attitude for a developer to have, is to listen to your customers and to continually refine your product and to bring it up to a level that they're happy with and everybody's happy with. Don't get me wrong, the aircraft is completely perfectly flyable, stable frame rates, a little bit high on the VAS usage, but acceptable. I'm still trying to squeeze it into my version of P3D. Again, your mileage may vary. Some of these switches a little bit on the bright side, but those are all little complaints. These are things that I'm reaching for at this point that I don't feel detract from the overall quality of this aircraft.
20, 10.
Okay, so you're all here for a conclusion, and I don't intend to disappoint. After spending a few days with this aircraft, exploring the features and admiring the improvements they've made, I've got to hand it to iFly for their impressive efforts to model one of my favorite birds of all time. Of course, there are a few things here and there that I hope they continue to work on in the future, but it looks like their team is dedicated to making this a fully featured, premium level add-on for P3D. I'm a little disappointed that for the price, only the passenger model is included, but who knows what's around the bend. I can't tell you if this aircraft is right for you. All I can do is point out the work they've put into it, explain the level of detail that comes with it, and point out some of the drawbacks. I've kept my thoughts strictly to the P3D version because that's the one I chose and paid for. If you're an FSX or even FS9 user, there is competition out there in the form of the original PMDG 747. It's roughly $5 cheaper and much older, but a solid product nonetheless. As for us P3D users, this is it for now. But damn if I haven't had a blast with it so far. I'm still closely monitoring the progress on PMDG's version 2, which will include the freighter and Dash 8 intercontinental aircraft, probably at a much higher cost, and I'll probably pick it up as well. Not because this one isn't cutting it, but because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and with the amount of time I intend to spend with it, I can self-justify the cost. But who knows when that'll be? They'll be done with it when they're done with it. This version certainly won't be relegated to the back of my hangar anytime soon, and it's a great aircraft to operate and fly. If you must have a 747 in your hangar, and PMDG money isn't something you'd be willing to shell out for, then I'm happy to say, the Queen is back.